It is a first down. Pirates.
You can paint this with purple. What an incredible win by the ECU Pirates.
Welcome into Blackbeard's Alley, a Pirate Football Podcast. We're coming to you live on a Monday night as we get you ready for East Carolina and Tulane. 7:30 kickoff on Thursday night down in the Big Easy. And right now to preview that matchup, we welcome in our good friend, the play-by-play voice of the Tulane Green Wave, and that is Corey Gloor. Corey, we're excited to have you.
Hello again, boys.
Yeah, appreciate your time as always, Corey, and the Pirates and the Green Wave, each coming off of an open date. The Green Wave 4-1, 1-0. ECU 3-2 and 1-0. The Pirates' recent victory was against Army, and then meanwhile the Green Wave went out to Tulsa and won the conference opener. Broke open. A very close game late in the second quarter and early in the third.
Yeah, it was, I think, a needed type of performance after what was the trip to Ole Miss the week before. Now that has turned into a top 5 loss right now for Tulane, but that was a kind of over as soon as it started feel of that game. And so to go to Tulsa, who provides some unique tricks, especially offensively, to go there and honestly, it really handled that game. It was a 14-all tie in the second quarter. Tulane got 10 right before the break, but Tulane really did kind of dominate the proceedings there. Tulsa hit a flea flicker early, and then a huge breakdown on a short third down completion to a tight end that opened up a 72-yard touchdown. Those were two aberrations in what was a pretty dominant day from this Green Wave defense. And so to pick up that game, which I kind of had circled as a bit of a worrisome game after a Ole Miss trip and the non-conference season, heading into an off week, a team that's been kind of battered and bruised with their non-conference slate, I had my concerns about that trip to Tulsa. They came out and performed like I think a lot of people were hoping that they would. And so now, coming off of some rest, they needed to get some guys healed up, especially for just how fast of a team they're about to see. That was a good thing for a lot of people here to witness last Saturday.
Corey, that leads into one of my first points and questions for you. And I know we spoke briefly about this before we jumped on live here tonight, but having a chance to play like an Ole Miss with the Lane Kiffin style of offense, how much do you think that helps as you move towards this Thursday night game with the Pirates and the pace we play as well?
I don't think it hurts. I think that the main difference when it comes to Ole Miss and ECU is Trinidad Chambliss for Ole Miss, that quarterback runs all over the place, whereas Hauser's not going to necessarily do that with ECU. But you're right, the tempo and just the get up and go style of John David Baker's offense, he learned from Lane Kiffin. And so seeing it a few weeks ago, seeing similar vibes of it, I don't know if it's going to hurt per se. Frankly, this is slightly more akin to what Tulane saw the week before with Duke a little bit. Duke is not as fast as ECU goes, but they are an up-tempo offense. They are a pass-first offense, and it's a pocket passer. And now Tulane knew that quarterback very well in Darian Mensah, and they gave him a rough day. They don't know Hauser as much. They haven't seen pretty much nobody on this Tulane team has seen East Carolina because they didn't play last year. And they certainly haven't seen now Blake Harrell at East Carolina. So this is not the first fast-paced team that Tulane has seen. Even Tulsa's top 20 in pace, even though they run the ball. And South Alabama, week 2, they're an up-tempo team. So Tulane's had some experience already with high-pace offenses. This is going to be I think more similar to Duke in just how ECU wants to attack downfield with explosive plays. That isn't necessarily how Ole Miss was operating a couple weeks ago. They were letting Chambliss move around. He had a 40-yard scramble run on their first drive that pretty much opened the door for them to do what they did. And so Ole Miss helped a little bit. I think Duke helped a little bit more to see East Carolina this week.
Let's start off taking a look at the offense. Darian Mensah, during the offseason, he made the decision to enter the portal, wound up at Duke. I was really thrilled to see the Green Wave win that game. He did throw for over 300 yards, but that was a really nice win. And then the Green Wave had opened the season with a 23-3 victory over Northwestern.
Yeah, I mean, the thing about that Duke game is a lot of those 300 yards for Mensah came when they were in scramble mode in the fourth. And so it was a game that maybe a little bit felt in doubt in the fourth quarter when Duke cut it down to 7, but then they couldn't get the onside kick. But he was in like catch-up mode, but Tulane really bottled him up pretty well. Northwestern in week 1, and that's another true pocket passer that Tulane made life really hard on. And Preston Stone, former SMU quarterback, he fired 5 interceptions on that day, and Tulane was going after him when Mensah left. That was the first quarterback they brought in when Mensah left in the portal and didn't get him. And so there's even a little bit of, I think, added fire for that game too. They've had some of these now come across their schedule and guys that they felt slighted by, I suppose. And then, South Alabama week 2, that's a bit of a trickier offense with how they run the ball. So Tulane had a little bit of trouble with that. But they've kind of seen a full spread of what a football offense can do in their first 5 weeks of the year. They've seen mobile quarterbacks. They've seen Northwestern's a much slower team. They've seen a run-first team. They've seen pocket passers. They've seen some high-level skill guys. Duke's receivers are out of this world good, and now you're seeing that with what they've done over the last couple of weeks since they left with a loss here in New Orleans. They've seen a lot of different styles of offense thrown at them in the first 5 weeks of the year. Tulsa was definitely the defense's, I feel, coming out party, even with the 5 interception day they had against Northwestern. That defensive line just manhandled the Tulsa offense. And that was what I think that had been a little bit slow to get going in the non-conference year. They had 5 sacks, 15 tackles for loss in the first month of the year. They had 6 sacks and 13 tackles for loss in that game in Tulsa. And so that felt like the group that we heard a lot about heading into the year from John Summerall. They were everywhere. And so they're going to definitely try and do that again against ECU on Thursday night. They're going to try and keep Hauser in the pocket, make life hard on him. And when they stop the run, they win the game. The coach Summerall is undefeated in his career when they win the rushing battle. And so like it's almost that simple of an underline with what he's been as a head coach. That's honestly step one. And I know ECU's running game has had some trouble getting going here. They want to make a team one-dimensional. Now it's going to be the dimension that ECU is more comfortable with. And so it's going to test their back end. But with how the pass rush performed at Tulsa, that's in a better spot than I think we would have said 3-4 weeks ago.
Kind of going back to the all season, I mentioned that loss of Mensah. You guys had the opportunity to add a very proven quarterback in Jake Retzloff from BYU with some circumstances that happened there. And Retzloff, he'd been recruited by Coach Summerall at Troy. I remember Coach Summerall talking about that at Media Day and how that process unfolded. But Retzloff, he's a dual threat. He's run for 7 touchdowns, has thrown for a little over 800 yards, a couple touchdowns, and has not thrown a pick.
For a guy that showed up on July 22nd, I think he's done a pretty dang good job absorbing the offense right now. There's still some more hurdles to clear for him. The link up with his receivers is still inconsistent. He's only thrown for 2 touchdowns, as you alluded to, Bubba. They've both gone to tight ends, and he hasn't thrown for one since week 2. And so there's still more to unlock with this passing game. And part of that, the receiving core is having trouble getting open. It's not a big play threat receiving core like this team had last year. And so part of it's on that as well. But I think he's become more of a dual threat quarterback than even he was expecting he would be coming in, and not because he didn't necessarily think he had the inability to do it, but he only ran for 6 touchdowns, about 400 yards in his time at BYU last year all season, and now he's already near 400 yards and 7 touchdowns on the ground. I think he's kind of surprised himself with the mobility that he has been able to bring. The offense has asked him to be a little bit more mobile, but the fact that he's succeeded in that has been, I think, a pretty good surprise right now for this group, especially since he was in a quarterback battle in August because of how late he arrived. Brendan Sullivan was the guy he was competing with, the Iowa transfer, and he is technically the better mobile quarterback of the two. He can absolutely fly. The only reason why he probably didn't start week 1 is because he got injured midway through camp. You'll see Sullivan on Thursday. Tulane will run a couple of quarterbacks out there, but Retzloff's the guy. The fact that he hasn't thrown a pick, he has fumbled it a couple times. He's lost a couple of fumbles, so he has been a little bit sloppy with the football. But the fact that he's been able to give Tulane an element of the offensive game that they didn't have last year, they didn't even really have a couple years ago with Michael Pratt, who was a good runner, but not as good as what Retzloff has shown. That, I think, has at least opened up the possibility to do a lot more of this offense. Tulane's still waiting to see it all come together.
And Corey, one of the things that I think of when I hear about Coach Summerall or think about his program is the running attack, like you said, the rushing attack. And when that happens, you've got to have good people up front. And it's interesting to me, there's 2 young men, one on the defensive side of the ball, one on the offensive side of the ball from North Carolina. I know the Holyfield family very, very, very well for 35 years. And then you got Santana Hopper. Tell us about both those offensive line, both lines on either side, because like you said, if Tulane's able to create havoc in the backfield and get Hauser off schedule, it creates a lot of problems for ECU. And then likewise, if Tulane can continue to just smash the football and run it and not have to worry about, being 3-dimensional in the throw, the run, and the run RPOs, that plays right into Coach Summerall's strategy.
Right. I'll start with Santana Hopper, and then I'll talk about your family friend here. Hopper won Defensive Player of the Week for what he did in Tulsa 2 weeks ago. A sack and a half, 4 tackles for loss. He was everywhere. And, what's interesting is that Coach Summerall has talked about he's felt Hopper pretty much all year long, but this felt like the true first emergence for him as a member of the Green Wave defensive line, and that opens up everyone else. Now, Harvey Dyson on the edge has probably been the slightly more consistent of the pass rushers, the Texas Tech transfer. But I've talked to some of our offensive linemen. I've talked to some of our running backs about what Santana Hopper has been like to see in practice. And they said there's just something about his get off that has been totally different from what they've experienced from a defensive lineman in their time playing football. There's an extra quickness to it. There's a snap to it that just it's hard to wrap your head around. He had a very good run at Appalachian State last year. Was maybe the best defensive lineman in the Sun Belt. And last Saturday was for me the first major time in which I saw him totally impact a game, 100% change the flow of a game. He's a monster. And when he is playing like that, there are very few defensive linemen in the American that can match what he can do. Now, for Jack Holyfield, who honestly, when football's done, might come for my job. We've even talked about that a little bit. The pieces around him on that offensive line have been changing constantly. He's been the only regular starter in that spot all year long. There's been some injuries to his left, some injuries to his right. Tulane regularly is playing 7 offensive linemen. They'll rotate the right side of the line pretty regularly. So the fact that he has been able to hold that down with a lot of question about who's quarterbacking up until the week the season started, and a running back room that has changed hands almost weekly. There's 5 guys that are seeing time in that room right now, and who the lead back is pretty much altered week in and week out. The fact that this offensive line, they played really well. I mean, the number of sacks that they have given up, just 6 sacks allowed in the first 5 games of the year. Now, Retzloff's mobile. He can get himself out of trouble, but that line has held their own, to say the least. And that game in Tulsa, Javen Gordon, we might talk about him in a little bit, freshman running back, had kind of his breakout game. And the first 2 touchdowns of the game, one was Javen's and one was Jake Retzloff. You can see what Hollyfield just does to just push guys out of the way. He had an unbelievable pull block for Javen's first touchdown off to the right. He plowed through a defensive lineman and a linebacker to spring Retzloff free on that first touchdown. He has been awesome up there, and there has been so little stability around him. It's been really impressive to see him play out. He was this close to being our player of the game on Saturday in Tulsa with what he was doing to impact that Tulane running game. It's been impressive to see him work.
Corey, if you would, and you talk about the Tulane offensive philosophy. Kenny Curlings says, Corey, would you say that Tulane is a run the ball down your throat offense first? Just what John Sumrall and then offensive coordinator Joe Craddock like to do?
Yes, it is that. It is that, Kenny. And this is, as I think, Jason, you alluded to it as well, this has been part of John Sumrall's philosophy in a, albeit short time as a head coach, but his teams at Troy were predicated on running the ball. Last year, when Tulane had Mekhi Hughes in the backfield, this was a run the ball 65% of the time team. And now it's a little bit less of a split right now this year, but when you add in Retzloff moving around, it kind of adds back up to that. And so this is John Sumrall, I believe the record is 29-0 when he wins the ground game in his coaching career. Like that is what he wants to do. This is not a fast-paced offense. They can move with some tempo, and they did against Tulsa. They did against Duke. They will go a little bit of hurry up, but this is bleed it down sort of team, and they want to give the ball to now Javen Gordon, who is kind of the big bruising back now of the bunch. He has taken the lead in that room. They want to give the ball to Zabari Mobley, who's more the scat back, shiftier guy in space. He can make guys miss all over the place. Arnold Barnes, veteran here. He has looked good the last couple of weeks. And the guy who was the starting running back at the beginning of the year, Maurice Turner, been injured the last couple of weeks, saw the field again for a couple plays in Tulsa. He might be the best all-around back of the bunch, and he should be good to go for Thursday night. And so there's a lot of different styles of running back in this room right now, and each one has had their moments to shine. This team wants to run the ball down your throat. And then if they can establish that, then that opens up the passing game that still has work to do to get to where I think this team wants it to be.
Yeah, off the air, we were talking about the passing game, and one of the things that stood out to me about your receiving core, most of these guys are 5'11", 6 feet, 6'1". Amari Hayes, he was spoke highly of by Blake Harrell in today's press conference, and then also Chaz Preston and Bryce Bohannon.
Yeah, and all three of them are slightly different in what they bring. Omari Hayes, probably the most dynamic of those three. He's also the main punt returner, and so his ability to shift and make cuts is very sound. Chaz Preston, he was hurt most of last year in his first year here at Tulane with a hamstring injury. Only played 4 games, I think. The last couple of games, he has been noticeable, and he might be the best big play option that Tulane has right now. The biggest passing play of the year went to him against Duke. And so he's probably the best get downfield receiver that Tulane has right now. Bryce Bohannon's about as sure-handed as you'll find as a receiver. He's also used in the backfield a little bit. He's a pretty versatile weapon, and he's a 5-year guy here, which is so rare nowadays. And he's finally getting an opportunity to showcase himself a little bit. He's pretty shifty, but he can do a lot of different things for what this offense is going to ask him to do. Tulane's still looking for the breakout from one of these guys here. And again, like you mentioned, the height is noticeable. The tallest guy in that receiving room is 6'1". That's a true freshman who didn't play a ton the last couple of weeks. And so right now, this is a pretty, it's a deep group, but right now they're still waiting for a leap from someone. And we'll see if a week away has allowed someone to kind of take a step forward. They are getting a guy back this week in Garrett Mamahat, who had a breakout in camp and then was hurt 2 days before the season started with a bruise on his quad that just would not go away. And I know John Summerall is very happy that he's going to be back starting Thursday. He's still not a big play guy, but we'll see what that does to diversify a little bit more of the receiving group right now, because I do think there's some more to mine out of here. There's some talent, there's some speed, and there's some versatility. Still waiting on the big moments to come from this group.
Corey, switch sides a little bit and talk about the defense for Tulane. And that's one of the things over the years when Tulane had this resurgence in football. There's a lot of – everybody gets caught up in offense at times, but, I always was super impressed with just how hard their kids played on the defensive side of football. And that's something you can't coach. That's just effort by the players. But your defense coordinator does come from the Nate Woody family of calling defenses, which we saw against Army a couple of weeks ago. How similar is he as far as the attacking style, that 3-4, that multiple front defense and moving guys around and just trying to let people play with speed? Is it similar this year, or is there some changes been made?
A little bit of change there, Jason. I think technically Greg Gasparotto would say it's a 3-3-5, but they'll play with 4 on the line every down. The bandit, the outside linebacker, pass rusher position, they'll drop that back from time to time to actually be a 3 linebacker set, but usually it's going to be a 4-man front. And so it's a little bit more, I think, regular of what you're used to seeing from a defensive alignment here. But that defensive line, we talked about Hopper already, and I mentioned Harvey Dyson a little bit as well. This group will rotate 13 regularly, on all 4 of those positions, and they don't feel as though they're missing a step when they go a baker's dozen down the line. And so that's where the whole operation's going to be won or lost, is what that front 4 can do. And behind Trayvon McAlpine, a really good nose tackle, Texas Tech transfer, you have Derek Shepard, who I think has been maybe the better of the 2, UAB transfer at nose tackle there. You have Santana Hopper, but they don't lose a ton with a guy like Elijah Champagne behind him, and then a veteran in Cameron Hamilton on the other side of the line. Gerard Henderson's missed the last couple of games with a shoulder injury. He's been backing him up, and he'll be back on Thursday. And you got Jordan Norman there as well, a South Alabama guy who has had some real flashes during the course of the year. Having talked about a guy like Mo Westmoreland, UTEP transfer on the outside, who was hurt, missed the Tulsa game, and he should be back for Thursday as well. And that just deepens that room even more. And so they will pick and choose they will blitz. They will bring 5, they will bring 6. It's not that frequent, because they do feel like that front 4 can do the damage to get into the backfield. Tulsa was the first time we saw that with a lot of consistency. And that, the interception numbers are high for this defense. Javion White's got 3, Joker Johnson's got 2 back there. And they've been very good. Javion White's been a real standout in the back end. But that front 4 is what causes all of that behind to really work and really happen. And so if that's having an off day, if ECU's moving so fast that Tulane can't rotate in, that Tulane can't get set, they just can't get to Hauser because he's getting away too fast, then there's going to have to be some adjustment. And Tulane's probably going to be a little bit thinner on the linebacking core. Their leading tackler, Dixon Agu, got hurt against Tulsa, and he has not practiced yet. And so we'll see what his status will be. If that front 4 can't get home, then Tulane might have a long night on Thursday, because the secondary is gettable. They can make some plays, but they are gettable against a passing team like this.
And I think you just answered Kenny Curling's other question. He said, what is the strongest part of the Green Wave defense of that front?
The front is it. I will say part of why Tulane has had such a strong tradition under John Summerall, even under Willie Fritz before him, of stopping the run, is that the safeties come up and do run fit extremely well here. Jack Chinshu at free safety, but mainly Bailey Despaney at strong safety. Kind of underrated what he does in the running game defensively. And so the safeties have been a really good group this year here as well for Tulane. Those are 2 veterans back there, and with a lot of newness in front of them, those 2 have been really strong back there. But it is the front 4.
And the last part of the game that, a lot of times we don't talk about in the media and things like podcasts, but tell us a little bit about Tulane special teams and their kicking game.
It truly, Jason, it has felt like in the games that they have won, this has been a huge difference maker. Patrick Durkin, the place kicker and the kickoff guy, he's had touchbacks in all but one of his kickoffs this year, and that was a weird squib kick at Ole Miss when nothing was really going right. He hasn't missed a field goal yet. This is a kid that prior to last year, in his freshman year, he was in practice and he suffered a broken hip when a golf cart hit him before practice. And so he missed most of the year. And now he's back and fully healthy. Tulane had a kicker injury coming into this year, freshman Cooper Helmke, who's got thunder, and they were kind of hoping to split the work with Durkin kind of doing field goals and Helmke doing the kickoff sort of thing. That hasn't materialized yet, and Durkin's been awesome. Alec Clark, the punter, was special teams player of the week after the Tulsa game. He dropped 4 punts inside the 11 in that game. The Tulane has not yielded much of any sort of special teams return and punt return either. This has been a major part of the season so far. And the biggest example was the win over Duke. When Duke missed a field goal, they botched a hold on a long field goal, and then Tulane blocked a field goal, and they won by 7. And so it's stuff like that. And after all those missteps on special teams, Tulane scored off of those. And so it's just stuff like that that has been the third phase has been a primary reason as to why Tulane is sitting where they are right now.
East Carolina has faked a punt as well as a field goal. The fake field goal helped put that Army game away with 8 or 9 minutes left, giving the Pirates a commanding 28-6 advantage. And then against NC State, they faked a punt on their own 35-yard line, trying to generate some momentum as they were attempting to come back from down 17-0. But yeah, just from a fake standpoint, what have you seen, if anything, thus far? And then also, if you didn't mention it, the return aspect.
Nobody's attempted a fake or anything yet on Tulane. Tulsa did sneak an onside kick on the Wave early on in that game 2 Saturdays ago that they recovered. It was right after they pulled out a flea flicker to get down the field, and then a defensive lineman ran into touchdown. And then they went onside right after that. It was a wild start. But after that, Tulane actually pushed them back behind the chains, forced a punt, and then the game settled down. And so that's been the only thing special teams wise against Tulane right now. Ole Miss popped a return or two on Tulane, but again, nothing was going right in that game. Return wise has been a little bit of a question because Maurice Turner was supposed to be the kick return guy, but he's been hurt most of the year. So that's been Anthony Brown-Stevens. He's been okay there. And then Omari Hayes, we talked about him already. He's been the punt returner. He's had a couple of good ones here. I still think they think they can get more out of him in that game. The Tulsa punter, Angus Davies, actually had a really strong game, one of the better guys on the field in that game, so he didn't have a lot of opportunities to get one loose. Hayes was a very good punt returner at Florida Atlantic, and they're kind of hoping to see more of that in the back half of this year from him here at Tulane. If Maurice Turner is back and fully healthy, we'll see if he's back in kick return. That's been a little bit of a weird spot so far for this team.
We have a couple of fans. Sorry, go ahead, Jason.
Oh, go ahead.
We had a couple of fan questions, actually the same question from Kenny Curlings as well as Johnny Gardner, just asking what we were discussing off the air regarding what type of crowd is being expected on Thursday night.
I think it'll be a rowdy crowd. The students will definitely be there. The word's been out here in New Orleans about this program now for the last 3+ years. John Summerall's very good about being public, and that very much the case this year. If you remember some of the stuff that happened following the Northwestern game in week 1 and the jerseys that Tulane wanted to wear in honor of the Katrina team, and he kind of went after Northwestern for not accommodating a request to wear those jerseys, and that really rallied the city behind him, to say the least. The last home game was Duke. That sold out here, and that was outside of the conference championship games that have been hosted in this building. That game felt like the first major true college football environment here since I've been here. Now, a couple years ago in 2022, when Tulane did their Cotton Bowl run, and they wound up in the top 25, and that aligned with homecoming that year against Memphis. It wasn't sold out, but that crowd was totally juiced, and you could kind of feel a turning point. I'm a long way of saying the people who will be here, it's going to be a really good environment. It's not going to reach a sellout. I wish it would. It's going to be a decent crowd. The weather looks like it's going to be beautiful here that night. And so that should bring more people out as we get closer and closer to game time here. The students have picked up what is happening, and that student section has been terrific during the course of the last few years, and certainly the 2 games so far this year. I hope that the general area of New Orleans and Southeast Louisiana and Southern Mississippi, they will bite the bullet on a school night and come out and watch this game, because it's also, I think, a little bit of an education process still, where the team that they are seeing is a high level team. And I still think there's still a little bit of learning process with that, with some of the fan base here. No offense to that fan base here, because I love them and they brought me in. I don't think they've quite fully paid attention to what East Carolina has been so far this year, how good they have looked, even though the record is 3-2, and what this game means down the line. I mean, there was a lot of down people after the Ole Miss loss, but the explanation that everyone was trying to get to the fan base here is that a playoff team's coming out of this conference. That seems pretty dang clear at this point with what the start of the year has been for the American. And the only way that it's going to be Tulane is if they have a good conference year and make it and win the conference championship game. So Ole Miss didn't change any of that. It's games like the trip to Tulsa. It's games like Thursday night against a team that is now in the discussion in the top half of this league in East Carolina. It's games like a revenge game against Army next Saturday. It was not the same Army team as last year, but it's still a lot of guys in this team remember that trip to West Point last year. It's going to UTSA and Memphis coming up in a couple of weeks. These are the games that matter the most. As much as Darian Mensah and Duke meant to this fan base, this one is more important Thursday. And so the explanation of that getting out to the people here has been pretty constant, and hopefully it results in a lot of people making the late decision to come out and come to this game Thursday night. It's going to be a good crowd. Hopefully we can push it closer to the 30,000 it will take to fill this building.
A couple more things for you, Corey. One of those, a football question, that being kind of along the lines of what you were saying, as far as the league as a whole. Clearly the Green Wave has only faced Tulsa, and East Carolina's only played Army. But with what you've had the opportunity to see, via YouTube or ESPN Plus in your free time, what are your thoughts on what the South Florida Bulls did in taking down Boise State in Florida, and then also you have Memphis that's been very good.
Well, I think you can look at the top half of this league right now, and you can make a viable case for 7 teams and why they can make a conference championship game and maybe even win it. 2 of them are meeting Thursday night. 2 more are meeting Friday night, because you mentioned South Florida, but they're going to North Texas, and they've had a terrific start to the year. Memphis is 6-0, and they have a win over Arkansas under their belt. And they looked great against Tulsa. And then the other team that we really haven't talked about yet, the Navy, looks great. And so it's clear to me that there's only one other team outside the American it's not a group of 5 playoff spot. This drum keeps getting beat, but that's what people are still calling it. UNLV is the only other team outside the American that has a legitimate shot here if they can run the table in the Mountain West. The American's going to get a playoff team this year. And you can make a strong case for half of this league right now about why they could do that. That's going to get weeded down as we get through October and into November. Usually by November, it's down to about 4 teams that are in the hunt. And last year it was Tulane and Memphis and the service academies. Army's not going to be in that discussion this year. The top half has gotten so much better that it's made up for what I think is still a pretty weak bottom right now. Charlotte is not going to have a good year. The fact that Temple has looked pretty respectable is a nice change, and we see them at the end of the year. But Rice and Florida Atlantic have both shown some pretty good things, even though they're under 500 right now. You can feel in a conference that has had to change rosters constantly now, the league itself feels like it's elevated, and that's great to see with what it felt like this time a year ago. And it honestly had the feeling of Tulane and Army and Navy and Memphis are trying to kind of carry the flag for the American and make the case that they belonged in the conversation with Boise State. Now you have 6-7 teams that have legitimately shown that they are capable of doing some major damage in this league. And I think that this is going to be an unbelievable race to November to see who winds up still in the conversation a month from now, because there's a lot on the line now in this league. You can feel it. Like someone in this league is going to play for a national championship. I'd be shocked if that doesn't happen.
Yeah, like you, I really like that hire of Casey Keeler at Temple. He had so much success at Delaware, and then obviously Sam Houston State most recently. But the final thing for you, Corey, is another question from Kenny Curlings. Of course, your final action that you described for East Carolina baseball was that 2021 Super Regional at Vandy, where the Pirates lost two heartbreakers to the Commodores. But he says, did you happen to catch any of that fantastic game with Trey Savage yesterday? Of course, Trey's freshman year was the year after you left.
I did. I admittedly, I did turn it off after Vladimir Guerrero's junior's grand slam. I was like, we're done here. And so I just moved to something else. I caught a good chunk of it. I was at the Saints game yesterday, so I didn't get the start of it. As I kept watching that splitter completely decimate that Yankees lineup, I knew that was there, obviously. I'd seen Savage a couple times, even though he and I didn't line up in our times in Greenville. And then what I kept going back to, actually, and you won't like hearing it, was the time Tulane saw him a couple years ago and took him to task. And I was like, Tulane's doing better on Trey Savage than the Yankees are doing. So that was a fun little thing for me to watch. I mean, like that splitter is nasty. It was unbelievably fun to watch that. And it was against the Yankees, and it's not like I harbor ill will against the Yankees, but I kind of do. And so it was also fun to watch that happen. I mean, now, and to see how fast he elevated to it's not like Toronto was like jonesing for starting pitching either. They're the best team in the American League, and he still started a playoff game for them and blew the doors off the place. His ascension that fast of a rise is not a surprise. What he did in that game was an all-timer. That was something fun.
Guys that your path did cross with directly at ECU, guys like Gavin Williams, Connor Norby, Alec Burleson, etc. What are your thoughts on what they're doing in the big leagues? East Carolina's had 8 guys in the MLB this year.
Yeah, I mean, I'm not shocked. I mean, the time that I was there, that period has pretty much sustained for that program since I've departed. I've been gone now for about 5 years. But the talent that was coming out of that program when I was fortunate enough to be in that booth is now where a lot of folks thought it would be. And, Carson Wisenhunt's another one. Like, I mean, what he showed up in San Francisco towards the tail end of the year. And so, I'm not shocked. Like that program knows how to win a lot of games in the spring, and they know how to develop professional talent. I mean, and now you're seeing, Gavin Williams start game 1 of a wild card round against Tarek Skubal. That's what he has been able to turn into with Cleveland. And so, and Burleson had a great year with St. Louis. Norby got injured, I know, in Miami. But came on strong when he finally returned from injury. And so this is not a surprise to see what they have turned into, and I get the sense more will be coming.
I lied. Johnny Gardner, very brief take, if you will, on Ron Hunter's ball club entering the season.
Yeah, this is a different year, when a different start to the year. For those who don't know, so Greg Glenn III, forward here for Tulane, he passed away in July in an accident back home in Miami, and he was kind of he was the heart and soul of the team, not just how they ran and played on the floor, but just off the floor too. It's been hard, very hard. And now the program is getting to practice here. I was just out there today. And so they're kind of putting pieces back together right now. I've talked a little bit with Ron since this all happened. This is the first time anything like this has happened with him in a very long coaching career. And I love that kid. Like, it still is breaking my heart. It's going to be a different animal for that program this year, and a team that had some very high expectations heading into the year. They're not going to adjust those heading into the year. They want to be in the conversation with a Memphis at the top, and a lot of the league has shifted around them. They still have the backcourt that played so well last year in Rowan Brumbaugh and Asher Woods, but Greg Glenn was kind of the fixture of that whole operation with what he could do as a big that could stretch the floor, and just the positivity and the energy he brought. That's irreplaceable. And so when they start on November 3rd, there's going to be a couple weeks, I think, for this team to try and figure everything out. They're checking certain boxes off right now about now they're back to practice for the first time and he's not there, and they're going to have a preseason game, and he's not going to be on the floor. And these things are all getting, that first game, they're going to do stuff to honor Greg, and that's going to be hard. And so these are all things that are the grieving process. We've all lost people in our lives, and this is the grieving process now here. Of moments are going to come now for this program that are going to be the first without him. And until we get deeper into this year, in towards December, in towards the start of conference play, this is going to feel weird for this group. They're going to get media days coming up, and they're going to get a lot of questions about this over the next couple of weeks. This is going to be a tough road until this team can start playing games again and get a normal rhythm back.
As always, we appreciate the time, Corey. Tell folks how they can follow you on social media.
At Corey Gloor on X, Twitter, whatever the devil you call that nowadays, and Instagram. If things go Tulane's way Thursday, you probably won't like some of the stuff I put out afterward. Sorry. But yeah, I still hear from a good number of you all here in Pirate Nation. Telling Jason, this is not my first chat with someone back from Pirate Nation today about this game, and so I always appreciate what I hear from Pirate Nation, what Pirate Nation has meant to me, and that you still thought of me in some element of esteem from my time there. It does mean the world to me, and I'll be back there. I think I'm spending New Year's Eve there, actually, with basketball. I think that's on the schedule. So ring in the new year with Tulane ECU basketball at Minji's.
Yeah, absolutely. We appreciate the half decade or a little more that you spent in Greenville, and the excellent job you did with the baseball program and otherwise. And we'll catch up with you in the near future, I'm sure.
Bubba, Jason, appreciate you.
Thank you.
There you have the play-by-play voice of the Tulane Green Wave and their director of broadcasting, and that is Corey Gloor. Jason, before we wrap up this edition of the show, Kenny Curling said, "Rest in peace, Harold Robinson." And that's such a huge loss, not only to Pirate Nation, but then he was a high school coaching legend, North Carolina High School Hall of Famer. And I know you had some thoughts you wanted to share on Coach Robinson.
Yeah, I had the pleasure to know Coach Robinson for many years. When I saw the news, first I saw Brett Hickman posted something about it. And, Coach Robinson is a part of a breed of high school coaches that not only affected Eastern North Carolina, but the state as a whole. And I feel like a lot of that guard is starting to hit the point where, you have people who are leaving us in this earth. And I just want to say Coach Robinson was not just a good person, he was an outstanding person and always treated people with respect. Anytime I needed anything, I could call him. He had a way of impacting young people, and maybe even more so us not so young people in the coaching profession. And I really loved his vanguard approach when he was really upset with East Carolina about some of the schedule and stuff that was going on, and took action. He spoke up and said what was right for the masses in the East North Carolina specifically. And he was a great Pirate and a great man. I'm going to miss him.
No doubt. Very well said there. H. Rob, some tremendous stories told down through the years on Pirate Radio from Greg Hudson. He would call him Marbles, just his his speech. But anybody knows Coach Robinson definitely can understand that analogy or comparison there. But yeah, just a great guy, and I had the chance to get to know him, and definitely value those few conversations that I had with him. Although I'm sure you knew him better than I did, but thoughts and prayers with his family and everyone that knew and loved Harold Robinson. But that will do it for this edition of Blackbeard's Alley, as we got you ready for East Carolina and Tulane 7:30 kickoff. Of course, 6:30 Eastern there at Ullman Stadium on Thursday night on ESPN. So there you see each and every episode of the show is brought to you by L&K Custom Homes, the company of former East Carolina defensive back Kevin Walker. Appreciate his loyal support of the show. Kevin, of course, played on that 1983 team that was so good, and also played in the NFL for the Tampa Bay Bucks. And really appreciate KK and all he does for the program. But that will do it again for this edition of the show. Thanks so much, Kenny, and then others for tuning in. Be sure to like, comment, follow, and subscribe. The show can be found on YouTube as well as Facebook, then X, Instagram, on social media. We can be found at either Blackbeard Alley or Blackbeard's Alley. Just simply search for Blackbeard's Alley, a Pirate Football podcast, and you can find us there as well as Spotify. But for Jason Tyndall, I'm Bub Rosenbaum. You've been watching and listening to Blackbeard's Alley, a Pirate Football podcast. We'll talk to you when we recap Thursday night and what will hopefully be a victory against the Tulane Green Wave. Until then, go Pirates.
Painted purple all night long.